Good morning, everybody. I have decided that in our week on archaeological survey and how archaeologists find sites to excavate and to study, I will take you on a little field trip and to a very special place in northwestern Connecticut known as Falls Village. This tiny town at the last US census in 2010 had a population of about 538 people. Little sleepy village in northwestern Connecticut, traveling through which is like coming through a little time porthole. Extremely cute and very quaint. You should all come here at some point in time and visit. It's a fantastic little place. But Falls Village is also really interesting because it sits on the Housatonic River Valley in Connecticut, which is a massive and many million-year-old river system that runs throughout the entire state and ends up discharging its waters into the Long Island Sound in New York. So it's a massive river system. It's really defined the geology of parts of northwestern Connecticut, and it is also a massive attractant for human and prehistoric human behavior and human settlements. And it's also part of the attraction for a lot of hikers in Connecticut and in North America. And what we see here behind me is one of the connections on the Appalachian Trail, which runs throughout the east coast of North America from Georgia all the way up to Maine, and essentially is a footpath that has been used by people historically to traverse and to explore this part of the continent, but was also a part of Native American settlement systems in North America. And one interesting feature about this area that makes it quite unique for archaeologists to try and find archaeological sites in is that the entire landscape around me here has been defined and changed over many thousands of years by glacial activity, that is, by essentially moving ice throughout the region. And after the last ice age, at around about 18,000 years ago, we start to find an area that was once completely covered in ice and in glacial materials starting to melt. And this entire landscape starts to change and evolve along with that process. And along with it, the area becomes a potential for human occupation and habitation once again. And so we've got a fascinating set of archaeology out here that not really much is known about, actually. And in fact, if you search for Falls Village archaeology, you're not going to find very much information, and that's because there hasn't been a ton of archaeological work out here. I'm just being mindful of there being possible hikers on the Appalachian Trail coming through as I make this video, so I can mask up if I need to. But right now, I don't see any. What I hear behind me is actually animals, little birds and squirrels. I think it's that time of the year. So essentially, we don't know much about the archaeology of Falls Village. There hasn't been a lot of systematic survey done in the area. The theme of this week in our course on Introduction to Archaeology. And actually I stumbled upon the area quite incidentally by a time that I spent here a little over 2 years ago. I was fortunate enough, a friend of mine, Mr. Dan Carr, a very amazing farmer, and his wife Marlene own a farm near here. And they invited me to come and stay on the farm while I was writing my PhD dissertation to get some clarity and mind space, which I highly recommend if you're ever faced with a complex writing task, to go somewhere in the woods and try and get it done. And that's what I did. I lived up here for quite a few months, and every day I would come and walk my dog on the Appalachian Trail in the afternoons. And I started to notice that there were actually stone artifacts being eroded out of the ground here, and that many of them in fact resembled some of those that I study in Africa in terms of the way that they're made and the kinds of rocks that they're made from. And so that is how I became very enthralled with the area and its archaeology that almost nothing is known about. And I'm going to be taking you on a little bit of a trip today to show you exactly how we find archaeological sites, what we call a site when we find it, and what kinds of objects might tell us that humans have been here in the past, and how we might study them. So let's get going.